toss it over to you. I'm going to toss it over to you, Meriam. Are you there? I let you in, so I know you're there.
Yeah, I'm there. All right. Whenever.
Yeah, Meriam is a high school senior in San Jose, or going to be a senior, and she chairs the South Bay chapter of Students for a National Health Program in Northern California. So if you want to say more about yourself, Meriam, go ahead.
No, that's perfect. Thanks, Peggy.
Okay, so let's hear it.
All right. So this poem is called "The Deal Is Done." I'll just sum up what I was thinking when I wrote it real quick. Basically, it's about the absurdity of the for-profit healthcare system. It mostly centers around, it is centered around private health insurance corporations and just how evil they are. So that's what the poem is about. It's called "The Deal Is Done." My heart stops when I look at the bill in my hand. I was feeling ill. Isn't it your job to cover it? I don't understand. I thought we had a deal, a mutual transaction. I pay you regularly, you help me occasionally. What's with your inaction? Tell me, what exactly am I now supposed to do? Tell me, how exactly do you spend what I pay you? It's almost medieval. My pain, you profit off of it. It should be illegal. My pain, do you get off on it? Suits applaud, they camouflage the vile truth of your pursuits. Empty words, these worlds of hurt rot a nation at its roots. We had a deal, but the deal is done. You can leave now. Your time has come. My friends and I, we know what you do, and we know our nation has no room for you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Let's show Meriam our appreciation in the chat here. And right now I'm going to share my screen to show some of the artwork from the CalCare Art Contest. I'm a little new to this, so let me see here. Is it sharing?
Yeah, you're good, Peggy.
Oh, because I can't see it.
Well,
That's really.
You did share your screen, but it's still black.
Okay, let me see how to do this here again, because we did it earlier. It worked out.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, here. Okay.
There you go.
Okay. So I'm going to leave Meriam's poem up there just for a minute so people can see it. In case you didn't hear it that well. Or maybe she can.
Can we share it?
Put it in the chat.
Yeah, can you put in the chat or maybe share it on social media so we can just share it on our main page?
I have a Medium link. I'll post that. Thanks.
Thank you, Meriam.
Thank you. Okay, so next we have, So, okay, there it is. This is called Recovery by Michele Gaffney, and she's an RN. She is an active California Nurses Association member and works in the intensive care department at Shasta Regional Medical Center in Redding, California. Oops. Okay, I'm gonna have to. Okay, everybody's seeing this one now. Okay. Healthcare for All. This is by a 15-year-old, it's called Graphic Metaphor. The artist is Giselle Oliva. She's a 15-year-old high school sophomore student at El Camino High School in South San Francisco. She has been creating daily art designs for their live streamed church services for almost a year. Okay, so this one is entitled Healthcare is a Human Right. Take care of our essential workers. And this is by Enrico Maniago. He is a Philippine-born artist based in Los Angeles, California, and he paints big murals, and he is an illustrator and sequential artist. Okay, I'm gonna have to back up a minute here, just a second, sorry. Like I said, this is kind of new to me. Okay, so this one is called California in Repose by Britannia Jones. She was born and raised in Granada Hills, California, and is currently residing in the city of San Fernando. She's an art major at Los Angeles Mission College, but she's also studied at Ateliers. This one is AB 1400, Save Us, by Pat Kanzler, who is an RN. She is a 68-year-old RN. She came back from retirement when the pandemic hit. She is a stage 3 breast cancer survivor. And she is an artist and an activist making banners for all of our protests. And I think that's it. I think we've seen, oh, wait, nope, not quite. Okay, so this one is, I'm gonna wait till it comes up here. Okay. Crowned Corona ICU team of 8. And this is by Mary Rose Duraco, who is an RN. She says, art is therapy for me. I work with themes of healing, inequity, and personal transformation using symbolism. Painting is a healing art and spiritual practice for me. So that concludes the art presentation here. I'm going to stop sharing and we can continue with the program.
All right, thank you, Peggy. Those were amazing. And thank you, Meriam, for the beautiful poem. So coming up next, we've got a couple of reports from our action teams, like I said, and I believe Jeff put some information in the chat there if you want to learn more about those action teams and how you can get involved. And I'll pass it over. I don't know, Richard or Hawad, would you? I see Hawad there. Would you like to go first, Hawad?
Yeah, Nick, I'd be happy to. Thank you. And thanks to Peggy for leading us through the cultural offerings section. Yeah, so I'm providing an update on our Elector Reform Action Team. So Jeff did send a little write-up about us. You know, we're in favor of corporate-free politics, especially locally. We meet Mondays 9 to 9:30. Sometimes we go to 9:45 as well, but we are very consistent. And right now, the major update is that we've been working with the Charter Review Commission of the City of San Jose on putting forward proposals for ranked choice voting or instant runoff voting, as well as now expanding the City Council as a conceptual proposal, so no specific degree of expansion there, as well as a couple other things that are coming up. There are a total of 4 proposals, and the other one is elevating the Ethics Commission of the city into the charter, therefore allowing it to get more resources from the city. And the other proposal, which you may have read about in San Jose Spotlight, is the shifting of mayoral elections to presidential years. And that would take effect in 2024. So this past week, we had, or last week, we had on Monday the initial introduction of these proposals. And then the following Thursday on the 29th, there was a public hearing. So we did our best to turn folks out to both of those, but there is a third opportunity. And so I'm really hoping that folks could make it out Monday at 6 p.m. Should be between 6 to 8. But this is our last opportunity to tell the commissioners to push these forward. Again, they're all very important in their own right, and certainly something we're really enthusiastic about as far as electing progressives, but also just making the process more fair, more democratic, and also more accessible. So we have a tap bio that kind of lists the main actions we're hoping to have folks do. Oh, that's a Zoom link. Well, actually, I'm going to lean on maybe Kevin, Jeff, or Mira or Elizabeth. There's plenty of us here to send that tap bio link, and I'll just walk through what's on there. The first thing is a click to send email template that works on mobile. So please do use it on your phone. To send an email in support, it goes to all the commissioners. Huge help there. The Zoom link for Monday at 6 p.m. For the day that they'll actually be voting to push this forward to council. And the third one includes a document with talking points in favor of the main two we're focused on, which is ranked choice as well as expanding the council. And so we understand there are different stakeholders here, but if you have any questions about how these are going to work, direct them to our members. Join us for our next meeting. We won't meet this Monday, but yeah. A side update is the similar initiative at the county, the Citizens Advisory, CACE, Citizens Advisory Commission on Elections. There we go. Met yesterday, met a few days ago. They're also considering ranked choice voting thanks to the work of another activist who strongly supports it. A few of us went and commented in favor, but I believe at the county level that is going to be pushed till later in the fall or early winter at the earliest. So we'll keep that on the docket and focus on San Jose for now. Thanks so much. I'll pass it off to the elections action team.
All right, thank you. Richard, we have Richard here from our elections action team. Welcome, Richard. We're still muted or can't hear you, Richard.
It struck me last a week ago Sunday at the DACA rally. I looked around and who were all of the elected officials or candidates that were there? And it was only corporate free candidates. Ash Kalra began, Alex Lee, Jake Tunkel was also there, Brian Wheatley, Peter Ortiz, Sajid. And so there was no candidate or elected official who was not a corporate free candidate fighting for the continuation of DACA and for the Latino community. That really struck me, and it shows me that we have strong linkages with different communities, and we need to continue to grow and support those linkages. I also want to report on the actions of the elections action team. Over the last few months, we've had some meet and greet interviews, including with Claudia Rosie, with Peter Ortiz, with Justin Lardenoy, and also with Brenda. And of course, we're going to be hearing from Sajid tonight, which is also in the nature of a meet and greet. The election action team meets the second Thursday of every month, and we're going to be meeting a week from today. The purpose of the meeting a week from today is to discuss a candidate interview process only for candidates that are SBPA members. We agreed a long time ago as the South Bay Progressive Alliance to endorse candidates early if they are South Bay Progressive Alliance members. And we do have a number of those. So a week from today, we'll be discussing candidate interviews so that we can get the endorsements of those candidates done by the end of this month. Our hope is by the end of August to have the actual endorsement process finished. of all of those who are actual members of the South Bay Progressive Alliance. The only other thing I'd like to report on is the SBPA Corporate Free PAC. We are still looking for a treasurer. We have a number of leads, but we would like to move this forward. I know that Jeffrey has raised the issue of whether or not a South Bay Progressive Alliance Corporate Free PAC can actually have relationships with candidates. It's my understanding that individuals can do whatever they want despite the existence of the PAC. If anybody has any different information, it would be good to share that tonight.
All right, thank you, Richard. Appreciate that. Okay.
I think we
so-
could take questions since our some of our housing people aren't coming on till 7:30. So if there's any discussion and questions on the election action and election reform action teams.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, we've got about 5 minutes until our next panel. And I know that Elizabeth put the tap bio link in there. Lots of things going on, important stuff here. Potential for, expanding our city council, ranked choice voting, lots of important things and ways you can get involved and help support these actions locally here to improve our local democracy.
This question is for Hawad.
Oh,
I was just wondering, I don't live in San Jose, I live in Milpitas, and yet there's a charter amendment for the city of San Jose. Should I consider tuning in or making a comment? Pass.
So is Hawad still on and able to answer that, or someone from the election reform action team like to respond?
If Hawad is no longer on, I could answer. Definitely, the county is taking up ranked choice voting at a county level in October. But voices are always welcome at these meetings. And if you look at that cool link that we provided earlier, the tap bio link, we actually have in that link talking points for each of the key issues on ranked choice voting.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, the tap bio is super helpful.
I'm not sure about, Jeffrey, you had a hand up, but you just talked. Is there another hand?
Yeah, just one other thing. Richard said that we're considering all candidates for office that are current members of SBPA. So if you're planning on running for office in the next go round, now would be a good time to check with Peggy on the status of your current membership so that we can consider you ahead of all the other riffraff.
Ahead of next Thursday.
So you can email me at pegelwell@aol.com. I'm not going to look it up now, but you can pegelwell@aol.com, and I'll tell you whether you're a current member. Okay. And there's another hand. Is that hand a new hand or an old hand?
I think that was just Jeff's.
Okay, so I know that Sandy is on now, so we can.
All right. So we will go ahead and introduce our next panel. I'm going to pass it over to Sandy. And Sandy, you can take it away from here if you're ready to go.
Okay, thank you, Nick. I'm Sandy Perry. I'm a member of the South Bay Progressive Alliance. I'm on the steering committee. I'm also the president of the Affordable Housing Network and also I am a board member with South Bay Community Land Trust. So I've been involved in housing for about 30 years in San Jose in terms of advocating, in terms I've been involved in ministry. Cham Ministry held a homeless shelter at First Christian Church from 1997 through 2009. So I've been deeply enmeshed in this issue. I've kind of got it in my bones, and we have several panelists here tonight who are going to address it, and so I won't go on any longer, but I'll start turning it over to some of these panelists. I want to start with Peter Ortiz. He's the Vice President of the Santa Clara County Board of Education. He's a candidate for City Council in District 5. When some of the homeless individuals and advocates out at the airport near San Jose who are being threatened with displacement and with being swept, when they went to march a couple of weeks ago, Peter was there supporting them. And so, and also recently, he's called me. We've been involved in an organization he's trying to put together called the East Bay Tenants Association. So our first speaker is Peter Ortiz. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Sandy. Like Sandy mentioned, Peter Ortiz here, Vice President of the County Board of Education and candidate for San Jose City Council District 5. To be honest, housing is probably one of the #1 issues that are affecting literally all facets of our life, right? Whether it's mental health, public safety, just making sure that our families have the resources and materials they need to live on a daily basis. Housing is one of the major issues that have been impacting residents in District 5 day in and day out. More families continue to be displaced, and that's one of the major reasons why I myself have decided to run for City Council, because I am a renter. I'm someone who's been born and raised in this community, and at the looks of this, I'll unfortunately never be able to afford a house. But San Jose has dramatically, changed over the last 60 years as it's transitioned from an agricultural community to now a diverse and lively city. And historically, it's been a place of tremendous opportunity. However, it's also built up a legacy that will be tainted by racial segregation, housing discrimination, and a frightening uneven investment in our diverse neighborhoods. It's no secret that we are in the midst of a housing crisis. Every day, more families are pushed out of their homes and out of this city by the skyrocketing prices of rent and mortgages and to purchase a home. The lack of housing options is absolutely harming to our families and even our schools. According to the City of San Jose's Housing Department, you would need to make at least $118 an hour or $240,000 a year to afford a median-priced single-family home here in this city. And to make matters worse, home prices have increased by 14% during the pandemic. And for the 2 out of 3 families who can afford this, the choices are really limited. But something that we have been able to see, about the choices limited is the declining enrollment across every one of our city's school districts. Families are being forced to leave Santa Clara County, and schools are closing because of declining enrollment. When students leave, so does state funding necessary to keep our schools open. And the housing crisis turns into a school budget crisis. In the last few years, school districts like Alum Rock, Oak Grove, and Evergreen have each been compelled to repurpose or close neighborhood schools. And while these neighborhood schools close, it's been proven that it's our students who are most vulnerable that are impacted the most, such as lower income students and students with disabilities and students from communities of color. With a safe and stable place to call home, our children will have a better chance of succeeding in school, getting a job, and building their own foundation here in the community in which they were raised and which they've lived all of their life. In order to disrupt this young families, this plethora of young families being forced out of San Jose, there are a few recommendations. One has been a policy being championed right now by the city to allow duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes in neighborhoods currently zoned for only single family homes. And that's called opportunity housing. These home types would be giving homeowners the flexibility to expand housing choices available in their communities. And what this would allow is for individuals who make income too high that would qualify for affordable housing, but too low to purchase an average home in San Jose. It would allow those individuals to be able to have options when they pursue housing. Once common amongst neighborhoods in San Jose, opportunity housing would be a way to keep families who might not be able to afford homes here, and would help them build equity so that one day they could afford a home, because eventually some of our older residents will need to sell their homes, and they're going to need to have individuals be able to have the money to purchase that. One thing that is extremely shocking is that right now, a majority of land here in the city of San Jose is restricted to single family zoning, which denies access to many of our vibrant community members, and community members that we all rely on to live a healthy and comfortable life. And that includes small business owners, our local cooks, our local servers, individuals who work in restaurants, people who are teachers and work in the education field, nurses and hospital staff. All these individuals are being pushed out of our city due to the lack of affordable housing. A recent study was found by the New York Times that showed that 94% of San Jose's residential land is zoned only for single family homes. That means that half of our residents are restricted to only 6% of the land here in the city of San Jose. Absolutely outrageous. And some bills that also I recommend that you should be watching in the state legislature, similar to opportunity housing, Senate Bill 9, it empowers homeowners to transition their home into a duplex or divide their property into two or both. Renters would still have local protections from eviction. Local rules around design and tree preservation would still be in place, and developers would not be able to just buy up an entire block and uproot an entire community. Another bill that I'm supporting is SB 10, which establishes a new opportunity for cities and towns by creating a pathway that would allow between 3 to 10 homes to be built on a property where it makes sense, right? This is not something that is going to be done throughout an entire city. This mechanism is 100% optional for local municipalities and leaves the decision to the local level and is not mandated by Sacramento. It's important to note that opportunity housing, SB 9 and 10 alone will not solve the crisis or restore the student population in our schools, but along with urban villages, alternative dwelling units, funding for affordable housing within the city budget, and dense downtown high rises, they are important pieces to the puzzle. And I hope that you could take time to learn more about those solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Our
Excuse me,
next speaker is someone I've known for a long time and who is maybe not widely known as being a housing advocate, but trust me, he is. I remember organizing tenants down at the Housing Authority to speak up against injustices that were happening over at the Housing Authority, and Reverend Moore showed up there to lend his support. He's another person in the past year, especially during the pandemic, when homeless people were threatened with being swept or being just generally not being able to access shelter or not being able to get into hotels when they were sick. Reverend Moore came out time and time again to speak up in favor of our unhoused residents. So I'd like to introduce Reverend Jeff Moore. I'm sure many of you already know him. Thank you.
Thank you for such a swell introduction. And hello, everyone. It's just good to see faces and hear voices, not just in my head, but actually voices now, as you sometimes sit back and reflect. Sandy, we go way back even to the jungle. And I've always tried to be a good ally. And sometimes an ally, you don't have to understand or know the problem, but know how to stand there in support of someone and not absorb the light, but be the light behind you to push your programs forward. And I hope I've done that. I had to come to deal with designing or saying who I was as what they would call a mid-skilled worker, meaning I made $70,000 a year and I paid out over $40,000 just to rent. And that rent would include my PG&E and the other bills. So my gross income would be right around $52,000. So that gave you $1,000 or so a month to try to manage groceries, PG&E bills, your car insurance, just living expenses to go someplace. And gas was always unmanageable. Much like Peter said, I have the desire to own a home, and we must understand now, as Peter was reflecting, to understand exclusionary zoning and its impact on concentrated poverty. And what we see now with opportunity housing, as I was reading, and I noticed 3 of your city council members have already lined up against opportunity housing. Unless we have opportunity to own homes, and I got angry, I guess, I got hurt. When I saw the city of San Jose investing in another police substation or training station, when that was not a priority need, when housing is a priority need. It appears the whole council is going down a road that it was not, at that time, beneficial to us as the community. I have 2 young boys, young men, born in 7th and 8th grade. I have 5 years to start saving as much money as I possibly can to help them get into college. I was no longer able to participate in I think it's the 509 or 529 plan. I had to pull back from taking that money, even though that was prior to taxes, in order to try to manage my family through. And I guess during the pandemic, your eating habits went up because you were more at home, you know. I'm in that chasm, that point of life where in the valley, I made too much money to get support from any structural programs, but not enough money to survive. I made too much money to get help with housing. So moving from where I was, my destiny was being controlled. And I felt that it is important for a man to leave an inheritance to his children. And I was not leaving an inheritance to my children. I was going to leave my children in debt. As I started living with credit cards, start trying to manage my life by trying to pay off one, almost robbing from Peter to pay Paul. And heaven helps you if your car breaks down in the midst of this. Or heaven helps when you had to buy tires, you know, and how it affects your just ability or quality of life. I became stressed out with wondering and caring more about my sons in the pandemic. And if I left them, and if something happened to me, they could not afford to stay where they were at. So at that time, I knew I had to get someplace where I could afford to purchase a home. And if in the event something does happen to me, they will have a home that they can stay in and not become part of the McKinney-Vento kids or the homeless groups that travel from car to car with nothing steady under their feet. I had to put cement under them. And it was an urgency for me as I watched this across the nation as prices were going up anywhere. And so part of my reading, I began to understand about the Gen Index and how our cost of living here is so desperately different than Mississippi or West Virginia. The poverty and wealth gap is not as great as it is in Santa Clara County. And that's why I tell everyone that it became a tale of two cities and almost three cities. There were 3 or 4 different levels of us trying to live there. And it's not healthy. It is not the San Jose that we grew up in. And I just want to remind everyone who's been there for a while, HP, when they developed HP and we were developing the electronic industry with Fairchild and all the companies, they had something, I believe it was an article in the Palo Alto paper, they called it LinkedIn housing or LinkedIn housing, where the housing was built in mind for workers to come, be able to afford the homes and live there. And when you look at what California, and particularly Northern California, has actually decreased in developing not just single homes, but multiple duplex homes. We're one of two or three states, I believe, that no longer building homes for people. So we're driving up a false cost. And like Peter said, I'm a lover of nature. I want to make sure everyone understands that. But I do believe as we move forward to try to develop housing, that when I saw them block off South County, we needed to do something that would be wind orientated and solar orientated. That's what we have to look at. And being here in Atlanta now, I went down to the Beltline and they have an old building that used to be the city hall and the jail. And they've taken that model, and on the first 2 or 3 floors, it's all pretty much restaurants. People just go there to eat. On the other levels, they have apartments and office space. And I was advocating at that time that we could start looking at changing our malls into some type of housing, Westfield Mall on the west side and East Ridge. And it was just totally turned down or not looked at. And so I just want to encourage you from this distance that you must continue to fight, those of you that can and don't have small kids or young kids, to fight to make San Jose, make the county, develop a plan, 2-play houses, make sure Palo Alto, make sure all the other affluent cities don't dump on East San Jose. And some of you know I was upset with the airport issue. And I would try to explain to everybody, until you get a guarantee on what they're going to put on that airport, don't let them practice that exclusionary zoning where they zone all the working class in one little area and compact them there, and don't do the same and don't spread it throughout the county. It was my concern. And so that's it if there's any questions. I hate to have to leave, and no man hates his home. And so San Jose will always be my home, but thank you.
If we're supposed to go through all the panelists, but before we have questions, but if you're going to have to leave soon, I know it's quite a bit later where you're at. Maybe if there are questions for Reverend Moore, we can have people ask them right now. Feel free to raise your hand either electronically or Joan Goddard.
First one has to unmute, right?
Yes.
Famous thing. I am so sad to hear that you moved away. I've been hoping to work with you on some things. So can you give us an email address or something so that we can ask you for advice of who to talk with? And we can also say we hope you move back as soon as you can, taking care of those boys. Thank you for all you've done over the years.
I thank you for the compliments. I put my email in the box. I'm very easy to contact via email, and coming here, I have family here in Atlanta. Let me make sure everyone knows that. I'm currently a basement dweller. I'm in my brother's basement. So me and the dog and my family's over my mother's house. So I'm able here because my mother has a hair allergic reaction to the dog, so I have to stay here with the dog. And but he has the pool here too, so I'm able to slip out in the pool and dodge the mosquitoes when you jump out at night, right? So you have to run in. But I am I will always try to work my way back home in a sense. I'll always be there to support and give advice or give my opinion when it's not wanted sometimes. I have sent some emails to City Hall, and I'll even send out a letter that I've been dealing with and reading about this exclusionary housing and how it has affected it. And I believe it was an article in 2015, Living Apart, how the government betrayed a landmark civil rights law, the 1968 Fair Housing Act. So if you get a chance, I think we try to put that in the box for you too. It's very interesting in how they have portrayed the Civil Rights Act and what they were supposed to do and plan on doing for people across America. But of course, it was the Nixon administration, I believe, right around that era. They did some funny stuff. So you guys take a look at that article and know that we do have to look for some form of opportunity housing. And it's like I said, it just hurt my heart when I was fussing with Cindy, you're building on the Reid Hillview Airport, but we have that golf course that's sitting there on White Road, and no one can explain to me, why can't we build something there today that would be opportunity housing? Why can't something go there today? Why are we pushing homeless people away from the airport and with no place to go? We're not solving problems, we're shifting problems. We need politicians that are trying to, that have a vision to step out in a bold place and do bold things to solve our problems and not just push them around until it's election and then promise us you're going to work on it.
I bet your family's glad that you're there, but we will miss you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to close with this. Yeah, they're glad I'm here and they've been trying to recruit me, and I've been trying to stay in the basement as a basement dweller. I said, until I get my feet on the ground and actually get a job. And it's just Atlanta's a nice place, and I've just done a lot of times in museums, and my brother's library is back behind me, so I've been here reading and just sitting down here. And I want to thank everyone for having me, and keep me in your prayers, and know this: if there's an opportunity to rise, and God says the same. I talked with my God, and he said go, and my family was okay, and so we left. But thank you.
Amen. Well, we're missing you. I know on that exclusionary zoning, it's actually not just opportunity housing, but that 94% of land where it's zoned single family, you can't build affordable housing on that 94% of land. And the reason is because you can't build affordable housing in general, except in multifamily units, because it's not practical. So that is excluding not only duplexes and triplexes, but it's excluding all affordable housing. And so all of these people that are out there defending certain sections of Willow Glen and Almaden Valley, they're the ones they're the council districts where the council members are standing up and saying, we don't want those people in our districts. That's what they're saying. So
yeah, well, and that's one of the arguments I had with Dev before I left, when they were trying to, I guess, claim some of Willow Glen as historical.
Right.
So they wouldn't, and I said, oh, this sounds like it's a squeeze on East San Jose. So whatever money she was supposed to get for affordable housing, I'll just put it over in East San Jose. And that's what I tell everyone, really watch that. And as we work with the airport situation, make sure that whatever they put there, that East Side 95122, 95127 community gets promises in writing on what's going to be there. They get promises to get the jobs to help develop the place, and that a lot of companies and people from the outside don't rush in and absorb everything and not give the people in the community the opportunity to succeed there.
Amen. Thank you. Well, I have to move on with our other speakers, but thank you very much, Reverend Moore. We have our next speaker is Rosie Cepeda, who's also with South Bay Progressive Alliance. Her family's been in San Jose since the early 1970s, and she's a career educator and a proponent of housing as a human right. Rosie.
Hello, everyone. I'll just briefly give you my background, and I just want to thank Reverend Moore again for all his hard work. And, I'll tie some of the items that he said So when I was growing up in East San Jose, there was invisible line that you could not go to the white areas. Like it was literally a known fact. I went to school with my classmates who were Mexican, mostly Mexican American, African American, Samoans, Filipino, Vietnamese. And they basically, especially on the Mexican American side, they'd been here 5 generations and they could never own land or property, let's say in the Willow Glen area, or especially in the South. So to give you some perspective, my family came here from Mexico, and within 4 years, we bought, a small home. At the time, my parents worked in the cannery making $3.35, and the house was $48,000. And selling that and going to South San Jose became a doable thing because they had the equity in the house, but they weren't educated. And so when you look at that generation, my father's 73, that generation could have just had to work hard, and you might not need to go to college or have a high school diploma, and you could still gain a normal life to raise children. Now, if you fast forward, I am educated, I have a master's degree, and I cannot buy a home. I mean, literally cannot buy a home. And so I'm straddled now with a condominium where the maintenance fees are literally almost $400. So between that and the taxes, I'm paying over $10,000 that goes out of my pocket, just completely out. That's not even counting the mortgage. And what's sad is, so our generation, the offspring of my aunts and uncles, my cousins, college educated, they have all had to leave San Jose if they want to raise families. I've always wanted to be a mom. I want to adopt a child as I wasn't able to. And so now I find myself in that situation Reverend more of where I might be leaving the area. If I want to be a mom, if I want to, and part of the pandemic is that it really stirred my anxiety. I wasn't able to see my family, not even my parents. I'm very close to my family. As you know, in our Latin family, like we hug a lot, we couldn't do that. That was very affected my mental health a lot. Food is very important. I could always go to my parents' house and eat. And so we find ourselves now in a situation where you can have someone who's fully educated, making a decent amount of money. I work, for the, San Francisco City College, but I can't afford a house, right? And so when I was running for office, one of the things that I found out is that there's these very exclusive, and to answer your question, Reverend Moore, I grew up near the the Hillview Airport. I always wonder why there was that, golf course there. And what I found when I ran is that there's these exclusive investment groups. These people don't need money. They're already millionaires that originally owned a lot of land here. And many of them are just parking their money. The other thing I found out, there was a report on NPR for Allentown. I don't know if you guys know, Allentown was a song that Billy Joe sang. Well, we're here in Allentown. It's a little, steel town. There's nothing there at all. And so this young couple, she was a nurse, she was an EMT. They were ready to get married. They thought, oh, we're just going to be able to buy a house and move in before our wedding. And she was crying in this interview, and she said, we're not Silicon Valley. We're not San Francisco. What is it? And then they digged into it and they found that Wall Street is at it again. They created these, fund, types of funds where their portfolio is real estate. So it's not just happening here. I just think, like Reverend Moore said, it happens here at a much tenfold in terms of the discrepancy between the haves and the have-nots. I personally think that there should, the other thing I want to mention is, in normal transactions, you would have 5% of the houses that were sold were cash. And right now, you're seeing upwards of 30% of homes. So if you figure out our average in my zip code, the average house starts at 1.5. Like, who has 1.5 million to just plot down? And I think there should be, a federal law, basically banning people from doing that, because it was really house ownership after World War II was really meant for, you get a mortgage you can afford, but then it creates this bubble, and we're right now in a middle of the bubble. And I remember, maybe Reverend Moore, you can remember when you came to that realization where you said, wow, like I really want like a house and I'm gonna have to leave. Like for me, I grew up here, my schooling here, I went to Santa Clara University. And I just remember having that, when you just sort of accept and just give into the reality of, I'm gonna have to leave. I mean, it's something that mentally you have to pretty much accept. I've accepted it already. And so I do think that part of the advocacy goes even basically beyond our area with a lot of the things that I've been seeing going on in the rest of the country. So that's what I want to say, you know, to most of you, sort of adding that extra. I like how Peter started us off, right? And then, you know, Reverend, and then taking it to that level that if you're not, and even if you're 2 household income here, I remember hearing teachers say, oh, I need to marry an engineer if I want to live here and raise children. I mean, you know, like, and I'm thinking, what kind of society do we live that people have to make a decision of who they marry in order to stay here? So it's very, very sad what's happened to a city. I'll close with this. I lived in New York City. I'm a 9/11 survivor. I lived in New York City 11 years. I worked in tech there. And I remember the day that my uncle came to me and said, you know, I never thought I would say this, but I feel like San Jose is becoming like New York City, right? All this building up, 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 up. And then I come to find out that a lot of the, not the developers, but those consultants who were brought to the city of San Jose to sort of, you know, like revitalize, to sort of create this new walkable city, they're actually from New York City. So that's kind of the reality that we find ourselves in. And for me, it just becomes a reality of, you know, you either own a home, you live in it, you rent it reasonably to people, and that's it. It should not be that millionaires and billionaires just get to become the Middle Ages landlords.
Thank you, Rosie. I have a speaker. I was given her name, but I don't know if she's present. Her name is Kari Gonzalez. I don't see her name here, but in case you're here and your screen name's different from your real name,
I have something to say about that.
Okay.
It turns out that Kari's daughter had a ruptured appendix and she's having to be in the hospital, and she can't, she won't be able to come on. So,
okay. Okay. Thank you, Peg.
Yes.
Thank you, Peg. Well, our next speaker is Sajid Khan. He's a longtime resident of Santa Clara County, lived here for most of his life, first in Milpitas, then in San Jose. He attended San Jose High School and returned to San Jose after college in Berkeley and law school in San Francisco. He's worked for the last 13 years as a Santa Clara County Deputy Public Defender and alternate public defender, serving our community, fighting against mass incarceration, for our constitutional rights, and for the humanity of our people, and for values of compassion and redemption. He's running for Santa Clara County District Attorney in 2022. And he's also a not very well-known housing advocate. He also showed up at the rally of the homeless out near the airport who are facing eviction there in the near future. And he came out and gave us his support and gave us words of encouragement. So I'd like to introduce Sajid Khan.
Thank you, Sandy, and thank you, everybody. It's a real honor to be with this group once again, and to see a lot of friendly faces and to meet some new faces and to connect on this really important issue. I appreciate our previous speakers who have really outlined the state of our housing crisis here in the South Bay, and I would like to add a little bit more perspective to it. what Sandy was alluding to was the rally at the Spring Street homeless encampment off of Heading and Coleman. As he mentioned, I grew up here in San Jose. When I was born in San Jose, lived in Milpitas until I was in high school, and then our family relocated to the Rose Garden area of San Jose, which is where I'm sitting right now at my family house that I grew up in. And there can be a false sense of prosperity when you come to a neighborhood like the Rose Garden. The streets are clean, people's lawns are mowed, the homes are worth multi-millions of dollars. And then you walk or ride your bike like I do, just a mile or two away, over the overpass near Heading and Alameda, and you come across the Spring Street homeless encampment. And then you ride a little bit further and you come across our jail. And you then can go a little bit further and you can go to St. James Park and come across our homeless populations that are in those areas as well. And so there is again, there can be a false sense of prosperity when you reside in neighborhoods that I've had the privilege of living in, but it's very clear when you just go a mile or two away that not everyone is experiencing the prosperity that Silicon Valley has to offer and that it promises people. And so many of our people are living their lives on the margins and are often forgotten. When we talk about our criminal justice system and its interaction with poverty and homelessness, I want to give a few examples that I think illustrate it best. One is I've been recently in court representing people that are coming into court for arraignments, meaning it's their first court appearance. And sometimes those people are people that are getting picked up on warrants. You know, they may have missed court previously and a warrant gets issued for their arrest. And then a police officer serves that warrant on them and brings them into our jail. And I've met a few of these people recently, and they're not accused of new crimes. They're accused of missing courts and missing court dates and then getting picked up on these new warrants, and they end up in our jails. And I asked them, you know, you didn't commit a new crime, it doesn't look like, you know, tell me, how did the police officers come to connect with you or know you? And they tell me that many of them tell me they were sleeping in their cars. They were sleeping in their cars in particular parts of San Jose and probably in more or less well-to-do parts of San Jose, and their poverty, their homelessness, their inability to have basic dignity in housing is met not with the social worker that's coming to check in on them or to give them food, but instead they're met with the police officer who's knocking on their window, criminalizing them, ultimately looking into their criminal background, and then if they find a warrant, bringing them into our jail as opposed to taking them to a homeless shelter or providing them housing. The second example I want to share is another scenario that just happened today. I won't give the specific details, but I was representing a young woman who was accused of a relatively serious crime, but she had no criminal history, had an apartment in San Jose that she shared with her partner, had a job earning a fair amount of money as a staff worker or a kitchen worker at a local tech company. And because she was accused of this crime, she was arrested and brought into our jail. And we appeared in front of a judge, and we were asking the judge to release her on some sort of supervised release where she would be monitored by our pretrial services agency, where she would receive some services that may be individualized to her particular needs, but so that she can get back out to her job, and so she can get back out to her apartment and get back out to her family. And from my vantage point, she was not a risk to public safety. What was she met with by our courts? She was met with a judge that set her bail amount at $100,000. And there is no way that she will be able to afford that bail. So she's going to sit in the jail in Milpitas for the duration of her case until her case resolves. And what's going to happen to her? She's going to lose her job. She's going to lose her apartment. And eventually she's going to get out of jail, either because she's been acquitted of the charges she's been accused of, or more likely, given my experience as a public defender, she's going to be coerced or pressured into taking a plea bargain because she is sitting in our jails as opposed to being out in the community. So she's going to most likely, just if without referencing her specific case, the odds are that she will come out as a convicted felon, and she will have lost her home, she will have lost her job, and she will have lost time with her family and probably suffered trauma from sitting in our jail that's not going to be remedied by our justice system or by a probation officer. So even if we accept the premise that she committed a serious crime, what are we doing with our criminal justice system to actually address the root causes of what occurred and not exacerbate those harms by inflicting more harms on this individual and in turn inflicting more harm on our community? Unfortunately, it didn't appear that the judge, the DA, or anyone else cared that those would be the lifelong consequences that she would suffer because of this very simple but profound decision of the judge to set this exorbitant bail amount. The third example I want to share is from another recent experience in court. I've been handling domestic violence cases recently, people accused of domestic violence against intimate partners or family members, obviously a very serious crime and a crime that needs to be dealt with and people need to be held accountable for. A few of the people that I've been representing in our domestic violence courts have been homeless, literally homeless. They are living in homeless encampments in our community. They're living with their partners or their loved ones. They're unfortunately suffering from a litany of mental health and emotional issues. They're obviously suffering from the trauma of poverty and houselessness. They may be suffering from unresolved substance abuse issues. And unfortunately, again, accepting the premise that they have committed the crimes that they're accused of, what are they met with by our system? They're met with district attorneys that say, well, here's the offer. The offer is 1 year county jail with probation, and they'll get released. There is no accounting for the root causes of what occurred. That obviously, accepting that domestic violence is a severe problem, but recognizing that there's context to every crime that happens in our community, that there is a human being, there's a story, and then trying to remedy those root causes so that we prevent victimization in the first place and or prevent victimization from happening again when someone comes before us in our criminal courts. But that's not what the answer has been or is in our criminal courts. Instead, these harms that these folks are already suffering are exacerbated by our criminal justice system as opposed to being healed by them. And so I just wanted to share those examples because I think they, better than me talking about the criminalization of homelessness or poverty, I think they illustrate how in real time this plays out in our system, where we are not responding as a district attorney, as courts, to the root issues that are plaguing our community. If, as I mentioned at the Spring Street rally with Mr. Perry there, if we were to ensure the basic dignity of every human being in our county, if we were to ensure that people had housing, access to healthcare, access to trauma-sensitive counseling, access to family, access to healthy food, access to fresh air, access to nature, we would be remedying the root causes of crime and preventing crime in the first place. And then when someone does commit a crime, even most serious crimes, if we address those core needs as a criminal justice system, we would then be rehabilitating them and ensuring that they become law-abiding community members and thereby preventing more victims from suffering in the future. But that's not what we do as a community because we have prioritized punishment, policing, and incarceration. I mentioned at that rally, and I'll mention it again, the statistic is very clear. We spend $80,000 a year as a state to incarcerate one person for 1 year in our California prisons. $80,000 a year. Imagine if we took that $80,000 that we use to incarcerate one person in our prisons and instead invested that on the front end of our communities in giving people homes, giving people education, counseling services, how much more vibrant and healthy and beautiful of a community would we have as opposed to the disparities that we witness today? So I appreciate this opportunity to share with you all. I'm really grateful to be in this community. I'm hoping that we can continue to have these conversations that are then manifested in real action towards, again, the shared dignity and safety and well-being of all of our community. And I look forward to connecting more with you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sajid. We're running short on time. We might have time for 1 or 2 questions. Are there any questions? And if not, I'm happy to editorialize a little bit as we wrap this up. I think what we're seeing, there's a couple of responses that are really appropriate. We're seeing a housing system which is unsustainable. It's getting worse, and we can't go on like this. And I think there's 2 responses that are appropriate. One, we saw just a fabulous example at the national level of a congresswoman who refused to go along with the failure of Congress and the president to extend the eviction moratorium, and actually slept out on the steps of the US Capitol building for 5 nights in a row. And as a result of that sleep out, actually got the eviction moratorium extended. This is kind of an inspiration and an example to all of us that we have to stand up and say no. We have to say no to what's going on at Spring Street. We have to say no to the way the city is treating the homeless. And at the same time as we do that, it's also important to have a vision of a better world. That's where things like South Bay Community Land Trust comes in. There's a vision of a different way of doing housing. A lot of times with the Community Land Trust, we talk about decommodification. And I think in some ways it's similar to the way of thinking that our people involved in healthcare think of healthcare, that we have to, these basic human needs can't be allowed to become primarily a place for private investment and speculation. They have basic human needs. If they're going to be human rights, we have to figure out a way that they can be distributed to everyone, regardless of cost. And there's no reason why we can't do that with housing. There's no reason why we can't do that with healthcare. Because what we're doing now is not working. Our best community leaders are leaving town. That's not acceptable. We can't survive as a society like that. So that's my editorial, but there's a minute or 2 if there's anybody else that wants to say anything.
I think we can move on.
Okay.
Did you have, Brenda, did you have something to say? Oh, you do, okay. We're going to move on now. We're going to kind of take a turn here and go to our next section of the program where we have 2 excellent speakers on senior and issues of seniors and disabled people. So I'm going to let Melinda to introduce Jodi Reid. So.
Okay. Thank you, Peggy. Yes, Jodi Reid is the Executive Director of the California Alliance for Retired Americans. CARA is the largest grassroots senior advocacy organization representing over 1 million seniors and people with disabilities through our 300 affiliated organization. CARE works to improve the quality of life for all older adults and their families so that they can all age with dignity and independence in the setting of their choice. So welcome, Jodi.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for inviting me. I was asked to talk a little bit about the Master Plan on Aging. In particular, whoops, I'm trying to fix this light that makes me look like a ghost. Anyway, and sort of what's happening in the world. And I just wanted to say, I really appreciated all the speakers I was able to hear on the issue of housing. And we have done some work with all of you through our Santa Clara County chapter of CARA to help support some of the efforts to deal with this incredibly frustrating and challenging problem. I live in San Francisco, and so I'm well aware, and we are struggling with many of the same issues that you struggle with. You know, it's completely unaffordable. And in terms of seniors and the issues that I'm going to talk about, the fastest growing part of our homeless population in California are people over the age of 50. And so not only now are we dealing with all the issues that your previous speakers laid out, but also people who may be challenged with not only maybe some mental health issues and some financial struggles, but also, you know, our bodies, the machinery sometimes breaks down as we get older. And so there may be managing chronic diseases, chronic illnesses, physical limitations. And so the problems just pile on. And so what we try to do at CARA is really by talking with our members through our affiliates and through our chapters. We have 17 chapters around the state, Santa Clara County being one of them. And Greg Miller, who's on this call, is one of the co-chairs of the Santa Clara chapter. Prioritize what issues to focus on that help meet our mission, and then educate and engage our members on those issues. And engagement can be everything from legislative advocacy to educational forums, to public events, to raise the issue, to you name it. We've tried everything. We dress up, we sing, we have had die-ins to try and get attention on some of the issues that we work on, because California is, as are many states in the nation, but the fastest growing part of the population is the over 60 population. And there's no getting around it. We all get older every day. And we all need to be thinking about what we need to be able to live and age gracefully and as independently as we can, with the housing and healthcare and supportive services that we need, so that we can stay where our community is, where our family and friends are, where our healthcare providers are, and out of institutional settings as much as possible. There are very few people who are older who would choose to live and age and then probably die in a nursing home or residential care facility. And it isn't that we don't need some of those for people who need 24-hour care, but for the most part, many people can, with kind of a realignment of our priorities, be able to age in place with some dignity and maybe with some assistance, but it's much healthier and much less expensive to create a way and a vision forward. And it's really about, you know, although our lens is a lens of older folks, the truth is that aging is this is a lifespan issue. It's not just an older folks issue that we work on. Everything we work on impacts everyone, because even if you are a caregiver for an older person, and 2/3 of the caregiving that happens in California is provided by a family member, because most people can't afford to pay for home care, and only a small number of very low income folks are eligible for publicly funded home care, for example. So from the time we're born, we're part of the process of aging and of being part of this larger community that needs to really think about what we need to live healthy, stable lives, whether we're young, old, middle, or getting older. The master plan on aging, I was one of 30 some people who were appointed as a stakeholder in this process to come up with recommendations to the governor and the administration about how we reimagine aging in California. And, you know, our systems are really siloed. there's the medical, industrial complex, then there's the social service provision. They don't talk to each other. There's housing and housing needs that change somewhat as we get older, because many of us are house rich and income poor, those who were lucky enough to be able to own a home when they were younger and things were a little less crazy than they are now. But now people are on, as they age, might be on a fixed income with Social Security as their main source of income, and they don't have the resources to maintain the house that they once, their family might have been living in, nor do they have it. People pass away, their spouses or their family members move away, pass away, and they're alone in a big house. That's this huge resource that's that's really hard for them to maintain, and maybe not appropriate, not set up now for the needs that they might need in terms of accessibility, et cetera. So this master plan on aging looked at various aspects of aging, from housing to healthcare to long-term supports and services, transportation, the digital divide, which is a huge issue for much of our communities of color and rural areas, but also for older folks who were unfamiliar and unaccustomed to the technology that is now part of all of our lives. That wasn't part of their work experience or their life experience. And now, especially with COVID, everything went online, and including their healthcare. And they may not have the devices, they may not have the internet access, and they may not have the training needed to be able to access some of the resources that could help them, that could deal with issues of loneliness. But because they're not connected, are really removed from some of those. So the stakeholder group over a year and a half, even during COVID, met and came up with lots of recommendations, over 800 of them, that we provided to the administration and the governor. And in January, the governor released his master plan on aging that, quite frankly, mentioned some of the recommendations, but most of what was in there, we did not show up. It was much more geared. It's supposed to be a 10-year roadmap on how we kind of realign and refund and reprioritize programs and services and funding for us as a state that's aging. But it was really focused on some more short-term changes that could be implemented and budgeted for. And so we've seen some realignment in this year's budget. But the truth is that until we address the issues of housing, which isn't really in there, until we reform our healthcare system and move to a system where everybody is in, nobody is out, the insurance companies no longer need to be there, so that the money we save can be used to provide a more comprehensive benefit package with less cost to us, to our employers, and to the state. Until we see home care and community-based services as a way to keep people healthier and living independently with a little bit of help, whether it's with medication or showering or food preparation, until we have transportation that is that allows people to be able to get to where they need to go easily and simply and affordably, because especially as folks age, they're less and less likely to drive as far or as often as they have in the past. And certainly the climate issues are huge for all of us, but for people who are older, there are some very specific health risks of high heat and power outages, especially for people who have dependence on power for their wheelchairs or for their devices or for their medication that needs to be kept cold, as well as the heart and lung and physical challenges as we get more smoke in the air. So that's a problem for everyone, but it's especially problematic for people who are older and suffer with some chronic ailments that just makes our high heat, likely fires much more regular and difficult to be able to live in the state. And that's not even talking about sea level rise and, you know, carbon emissions and all of the other things that are impacting all of our daily lives. And then, of course, I talked about the digital divide. All of these things, there are recommendations and next steps that we could take if we were willing to readjust the way we think about aging and see it as starting from the day we're born and really building a care economy that embraces all of the things that I just mentioned. So that is that's a really tall order. And so Kara is about not only trying to pick away at some of these issues and look for steps that we can take legislatively and administratively, et cetera, to try and move beyond where we're at right now and get us out of this unsustainable system that we're living in. But it's also about coalescing with organizations like yours. That's why we're a coalition of organizations, because these are intergenerational issues. We are all impacted by our lack of foresight in thinking about how we age with grace and dignity and independently. That's something that we want for ourselves, for our parents, for our grandparents, for our kids. And we are part of the movement to create a more sustainable, healthier city, state, and nation. And so I'm really thrilled to have met you all through this. I hope we'll find ways to support each other as we move forward. I could talk forever about some of these issues, but I just sort of wanted to give you an overview of some of the things that we're thinking about, working on, and engaging in. So I think I'll stop there.
Thank you, Jodi.
Mhm.
If you can put information about how to contact Kara into the chat, that would be great, especially the local information also, if you can, of when the group meets. So, and I think what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and have our second speaker in this section, and then have because I think there may be some overlapping issues, and then we'll have some whatever time we have left for discussion. So I am going to introduce Michele Mashburn. Michele is the director of the San Jose Peace and Justice Center and an elected county council member for the Santa Clara County Green Party. She is a disabled activist and advocates for many causes. Having lived with both invisible and now visible disabilities, she uses her experiences to create change. Throughout the pandemic, she has been actively involved with the emergency planning through the access and functional needs meetings at the state, county, and city levels, and actively directly with elected officials to help ensure the needs of the disability community are heard. So yes, Michele. Hi. And thank you for, we have a lot of good speakers tonight, and I'm grateful that people have stuck around to hear everybody. And no, don't forget we have poets at the end, so.
Thank you, Peggy. I created a small presentation just because it helps me keep track of my ideas a little bit better. So I'm going to share my screen. I am talking about disability advocacy during COVID. On this slide, you see an image of me in my wheelchair outside of the Peace and Justice Center with the lift that I primarily use to access the space. And that lift is an accommodation. This shows how an accommodation does not always equal access. And that's just an important caveat to remember. Some of the background about who I am, what I've been doing, and when disability in particular is, and these details were taken from the brief that we wrote with Cindy Chavez's office in the referral that was put forward to create an Office of Disability Affairs at the county. The United Nations defines disability as an evolving concept, resulting from attitudinal and environmental barriers hindering the participation of persons with disabilities in our societies. The notion of disability, though, is not fixed and can alter depending on the prevailing environment from society to society. It's also very, very necessary to acknowledge the intersectional experiences of people with disabilities who are also people of color, women, transgender, and non-binary individuals, people with an immigration status, as well as those that identify as LGBTQ. A bit of background on this. To continue that, people with disabilities experience exclusion as a result of physical, attitudinal, and financial and policy barriers. People with disabilities are also more generally likely to experience poverty, food insecurity, health problems, discrimination, more use of force by police, exclusion from the built environment, and inadequate social services and life supports. I'm going to turn this part off here. So with that, early in the pandemic, I started writing letters to the electeds about the need for inclusion of people with disabilities in emergency planning. People with disabilities were told just stay inside, as was everybody, but we were told even more so stay inside. A lot of seniors received extra supports and they were not universally applied to people with disabilities. I started tapping in to find answers with the state access and functional needs committees. Access and functional needs is an interesting term that many people don't even kind of know what it is. But it includes not only people with disabilities, but seniors, parents of children, as well as parents of children with disabilities, service providers, teachers, families with limited English proficiency, and those with limited access to transportation. So those that relied on busing through COVID were covered under the access and functional needs. I also started to attend county access and functional need working group meetings and advisory panels on city and county reports, as well as some state report outs of the progress and the positive things and not so positive things that were omitted, the things that were done and the things that were omitted. During COVID, during the pandemic, in October, I presented with a friend, or I had supported a friend in presenting to the Human Service Commission of the City of San Jose a report on the school to prison pipeline for students with disabilities in Santa Clara County. Through that and other things, I networked with more people. A group of us started doing what we call tag team commenting in council and board of supervisor meetings, as well as some at the state level as well. So with that, one of us would call in, we'd either see that disability was or was not mentioned on the curriculum, on the agendas, and we would call in with an intention of we'll speak on this item, and typically we ended up speaking on at least 2 items in most meetings. It's a process I want to explore more as we go forward. In January 2021, following some reports that were released from the city access and functional needs group within the Office of Emergency Management, there were huge omissions, as well as the ongoing ableism that is like, well, we can't say that word disability without it, being a bad thing. And it's like, no, disability is my identity, and as my identity, it's an okay term to use. So we began to push more with the City of San Jose for better services and inclusion of people with disabilities, not only in the planning efforts, but throughout representation, throughout different things. In late 2020 to early 2021, 3 or 4 of the disability advocates, we started to meet weekly. And this included some difficult conversations because the community of people with disabilities is very diverse. You have rich people and poor people and young people and old people, and you have pretty much, the intersectional oppressions that are there get replicated and they're changed. You have stigma, you have a lot of other things. But we met weekly to start to create the process, and ultimately what we decided on was we wanted to push for the Office of Disability Affairs with the City of San Jose, with the fallback plan of we would accept a commission being reestablished from the one that was dissolved, I don't know how many years ago. So we started doing that, and we researched to get the allocation. So we ended up getting an allocation in the mayor's budget from this tag team talking and other things. At that time, it was framed as to research the need for a city office. and it was $150,000. And then in May, Supervisor Cindy Chavez, who I've had multiple interactions with at this point in time because of access and functional needs in the disability community, she reached out to a team of us, and that team included Sherry Burns and Chris Fitzgerald from Silicon Valley Independent Living Center, Beverly Wong, I believe is her last name, and others from Parents Helping Parents, Kristen Brown with Sbpa 5, Molly McLeod, Veronica Guzman from Yoso Tu Voice. Supervisor Chavez was ready to put forward a referral for the Office of Disability Affairs in Santa Clara County to go under the other equity offices as a measure of equity based on all of our ongoing kind of advocacy that we were doing. So we worked with her office to draft the referral and planned an inclusively designed stakeholders engagement session to receive feedback on the referral to ensure that the proposal stayed true to a disability community mantra of nothing about us without us. And then through that, we had over 70 people who attend the community engagement meeting. And it was a beautiful event that included a lot of inclusive planning and other things. So we got two huge wins out of this, out of our advocacy. One was Santa Clara County's referral to create an Office of Disability Affairs, which was approved unanimously with at least one of the supervisors saying, why did we not have this already? And a point to remind everybody, we're 31 years past the Americans with Disabilities Act being passed. So it's well beyond time, as well as the city of San Jose is one of two of the largest 10 cities that does not have an Office of Disability Affairs. So through that, the thing that happened next was the city of San Jose allocated the $150,000 towards the establishment of an Office of Disability Affairs in 2022. So while we didn't get it immediately right here, right now, we managed to have that win of also moving the tide in the city of San Jose. Now, one deliverable from that meeting that we had was everybody that was there typed in words of what an Office of Disability meant to them. And this just kind of gives you an overview of, needed representation, access, independence, necessary, powerful, inclusion, advocacy, and many other words. I think that was also attached to the brief that was included to the County Board of Supervisors. So basically, how can you help kind of to move this into an action item? There's always disability advocacy stuff going on. On September 28th, the referral will come back to the Board of Supervisors for the referral for the approval of that, which will include staffing, funding, all these other things, the whole process towards the full establishment of the office. So that's a time when we need letters and calls of support because it's not an inexpensive thing to create. Another thing that everybody can do to help is when you use the term accessible, are all groups represented and who might be missing? That's kind of a pet peeve of mine, but when I hear accessibility, but yet I don't see disabled people even mentioned in that accessibility, that's an ongoing active omission, an unintended omission, but it's an omission. And then you can also reach out to me via email at michele@sanjosepeace.org. The other thing that's coming up is I'm doing an anti-ableism training with Sacred Hearts Showing Up for Racial Justice, and that's on August 14th from 10:30 till noon. And it's virtual, so it's a Zoom webinar or Zoom event, and we'll be covering that then. So,
Wow.
and that's what I have.
Thank you so much, Michele. That was just chock full of information and insights and perspective. And I have to switch gears for a second here. I'm very apologetic about this. I want to get back to any discussion and questions that we have for both Jodi and Michele, but we have a youth poet who has to leave like now. So I told her I would put her on next. Are you still there, Anouk?
Yes, thank you so
Okay,
much.
so let me just introduce you really quickly. She's 17 years old. She's the Youth Poet Laureate of Santa Clara County. She's from Saratoga, and a firm believer in the words, "The role of the artist is to make the revolution irresistible," and is always looking for inventive ways to tackle current events in her poetry. And I think that I will just stop there and let your poetry speak for itself. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for that introduction, Peggy. And thank you guys so much for having me. I'm so sorry about cutting into the program. I have a kind of like timing issue because I had originally thought that the meeting ended at 8:30. And so I have another meeting to hop onto, but I'm super excited to share 2 poems with you guys today. Yeah, so this first poem, I always love sharing this poem, especially when I'm performing in the South Bay, where I feel like everyone is very familiar with the community. But this first poem is a poem I wrote a while ago, and I've performed it a few times before, but it's called An Ode to Teenage Girls. And so I wrote this poem for, if any of you guys are familiar with where Los Gatos is and where Los Gatos High School is, over the past 2 years, there's basically, they had their own version of like a Me Too movement where there was a group of girls who came forward about having been assaulted by members of the football team, and kind of what ensued was like a clash between the administration and student survivors who were speaking about their experiences. And so I wrote this poem in honor of kind of these teenage girls who are, I guess, like modern day revolutionaries who are kind of, I guess, like speaking out for the survivors on their campus and trying to make their campus a safer space for other survivors and just other young people. And yeah, so this poem is called An Ode to Teenage Girls, after Olivia Gatwood. I want to write an ode to all the teenage girls, an ode to all the awkward, cherry lip glossed halfway women who never fail to grace the hallways of high school at the ungodly hour of 7:30 a.m. each morning. An ode to teenage girls who sneak icebreakers into their mouths between sentences during Socratic seminars, girls who know that names aren't important when you're bleeding, girls who go around tucking sticks of tampons and spearmint gum into other girls' palms like pseudo fairy godmothers. I want to write an ode because all the girls in my grade are scrappy, good at spitting puns out of thin air and mending torn dresses in crowded bathrooms with safety pins and adrenaline. I am writing an ode because all the girls in my grade are determined, because no teenage girl has ever backed down from an argument about feminism or human rights or Gossip Girl, because the girls in my grade don't take no for an answer. A talent we inherited from upperclassmen boys cloaked in Letterman jackets. My best friend once told me, it doesn't matter how you were taught a skill as long as it is yours to use now. And 3 years later, she is now a 2-time debate state champion known for her persistence. My best friend wears no limits like a badge, refurbishes the bad memory until it is a first place trophy. And the girls in my grade are magic like that. All of us expert linguists, too skilled at conjuring euphemisms out of thin air, until the salted wound fades into nothing bigger than a forget-me-not. See, the girls in my grade are magic, but sometimes even magic falls short from grace. Last year, a girl in the grade was assaulted by a varsity football player. That day, there was no magic in the hallways. Every girl in the grade cried for her a shaky elegy of locker-side huddles and snapped hair ties. Every girl checking in on her best friend like a daughter. Strangers sopping the collateral damage off of each other's faces. And all of us heaving our bodies into history class only to learn that the pain is nothing special. Spiraling through textbook pages and learning that people have been cracking our bodies open for pleasure for centuries, learning that for us, the world has never stopped drumming up reasons to write eulogies and brandish pepper spray. And isn't that teenage girlhood? Knowing that at any time, anyone you love could be swallowed by someone who thinks they can pocket the sun. knowing that there are people out there who want to pop your vocal cords like violin strings, but still choosing to excavate a song from your lips. And what is more teenage girl than constantly mourning the way your body turned into someone else's gaudy souvenir, but still belting the lyrics every time Taylor Swift comes on the radio because that's your song. And at least no one can take that joy away from you. And isn't that why teenage girls are magic in the first place? We find joy in the smallest places and tuck the glowing thing into the pocket of our cheek because our joy is our survival. Survival for times when they will call you weak, comical, uncanny. They will look at you and say that you are too loud and too angry. They will tell you to go back to popping bubble gum and flipping magazine covers, yell at you and say that your scream will always be more villainous than anyone's wild thumping palms, and they will tell you that it is useless, that praying for any ending other than a burning one is futile, that hoping for a tomorrow where no one is silenced or being stomached whole is foolish, but we still do it anyways. Because right now, we are so young and the pain is so fresh that we dare believe that this type of hurt will not last forever. I am writing an ode because we are young and naive, and choosing to be hopeful doesn't yet feel radical. A girl in my history class asks if the pain will last forever. The history teacher is a woman in her late 30s, solemn, quiet, and tired. She doesn't wear lip gloss or chew spearmint gum, but I imagine that she too was once a teenage girl, wide-eyed and hopeful, sitting in the back of an A-push classroom, dreaming of a place where no man can cast a large shadow, doing what teenage girls do best, praying for a soft rebirth. Yeah, so that was the first poem, and I thought it'd be really relevant to share because I know one of the main goals of the Alliance is also furthering gender equity, and so I just thought that would be a relevant piece. And so the next piece I wanted to share, actually, I kind of just thought of while I was listening to a lot of the topics that were being brought up. And I thought, like, especially when a lot of the speakers were talking about housing and our current housing crisis, it just reminded me of this poem by Franny Choi that I wanted to share. Basically, it talks about if we want to be brave enough to kind of imagine this like radically equitable future, we also have to be brave enough to like take accountability for our current status quo. And so this poem is called Introduction to Quantum Theory by Franny Choi, and I hope you guys enjoy. There are so many parallel universes that concern us. In one, he isn't dead. In another, you drink light with your hands all winter. There is a universe in which no one is lying emptied in the street as the gas station burns. A universe in which our mothers haven't learned to wrap their bones in each small grief they found. There is a universe in which there is no difference between the past and the ground. Another where the oceans pull the moon, and so on. This is an incomplete list. It has been abridged for your comfort. I could tell you about the many universes in which bad things happen to people other than the people you love. Yes, in another life, it's someone else's sister who climbs to the roof that night. In another life, the boys rise darkly from the asphalt to choke the engines of cruisers, and no one gives birth chained to a hospital bed, and no one's child washes blue ashore. Sure, you can have those worlds. You can warm them in your hands at night, but know by signing, you agree to also be responsible for the universe where the oceans glow red. The universe, what we call shadow, is pulsing with the musk of hooves, and everyone, the one in which humans exist, but only in the nightmares of small children. Will you hold that one too? The version of the story that never learned to consider sound, and the one where sound is only the opposite of metal, and the one where the sound of metal is never enough to quiet the dead. Will you hold that one too? Yeah, so those are the two poems I wanted to share, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, I'm so sorry for having to leave early and having to cut between the program, but I really enjoyed this meeting and just hearing about the work you guys are doing. And you guys are all so amazing. And just thank you so much. And I really enjoyed my time. Have a great night.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's kind of hard to switch back again. I did want to see if there was people who had questions or comments about this Michele and Jodi's presentations. I'm actually going to start it off a little bit. I know from my work in the Low Income Self-Help Center that the whole question of disability and SSI, the incredibly inadequate SSI, maybe you can both address that, because I know that you are familiar with it.
Should I start, Michele?
I'm okay either way.
Okay, I'll start and you can jump in. So we have, after the 2008 recession, well, first of all, SSI is not based on any real-time cost of living estimations or formula. You know, the SSI is a federal program, but states can add to the federal payment for very low income seniors and people with disabilities if they so choose. Not many states do, but California, because we're an expensive state, the cost of living is incredibly high, has for many, many years added a state supplement, which is called SSP, to the federal allotment. And it wasn't very much and it wasn't enough, but it was helpful in dealing with this, incredibly low amount of money for people to try and live their life. And after the 2008 recession, many programs were cut, and the state portion of SSI, the SSP grant, was eliminated, as was the COLA attached to that. And for every year since, we've been trying, especially as the economy rebounded, to reinstate that base grant and the COLA, and really take a look at what would bring people out of poverty, because right now folks on SSI alone are living below the poverty level. And this, every year we got, we took some steps forward, some steps back in the midst of all of our work. One of the other really inequities around for people who are disabled and seniors is that because of the SSP program, people were ineligible for getting food stamps or CalFresh. And so we tackled that problem as well. And we were finally able to eliminate some of the obstacles so that people in California who are on SSI can get CalFresh. That was a huge victory a couple of years ago, but we still weren't able to bring up the base grant. This year, because there was some unexpected revenue, and building on our work of many years and sort of the promise of the governor to try and deal with income inequality in the state, we were able finally to begin to address and replace that money that was cut in 2009. So, we're talking 12 years ago. But it's not a full replenishment to get us even to where we were in 2008 before the recession. And it won't start until 2022. And with the opportunity to revisit the rest of the money that we're trying to replace 2 more years after that. So still, people who are on SSI are living below the poverty line, and the costs have only gone up, as we all know. So even reinstating to where we were is not enough. And it just goes to show you, again, it fits into all the conversations we're having around the issue of, if we really want to deal with income inequality in the state, we need to stop giving the rich tax breaks and both at the state level and the national level, and start looking at, bridging some of these income gaps or these wealth gaps that are enormous, and provide some sort of human level of evaluation on how we spend our resources in this very wealthy state. So that's where we are. We're far from done, but we had a small victory this year in this year's budget, and there's a lot more work to do.
And so this is Michele. I will add in as well that at the federal level right now, there's demolished disabled poverty. Being on SSI also means that if you're married to somebody, you don't get double the benefits. You actually don't even get 1.5 times the benefits. So you lose one person's benefits. And if one of those people is working, the benefits and the health insurance get taken away because of the income level of the worker. With those benefits come, with the benefits, what comes in is health insurance. In the state of California, that need for in-home care through the Working Disabled program, like I'm still able to hold on to my in-home supportive service payment or my services, even though I'm working a good bit of time, but we need to end disabled poverty. We need to demolish disabled poverty as the hashtag. The thing that's equally important to frame this, every person who is receiving $300 to $600 extra on a weekly basis, 2 weeks was more than what a person on SSI receives in a month. So why do we value workers over disabled people? Why do we not ensure the programmatic supports that these people need? That's the larger problem, is the stigma that's attached to the disability. Why are we paying SSI people $700 to $900 a month when, you can't live in the state of California on that money amount? And there's no guaranteed housing to tie it back into the other thing. Once upon a time, people with disabilities were allowed to have vouchers, not so much anymore. So all of these are important questions and important issues that need the added advocacy of all people to bring the changes about. The other variable is the savings cap, that you can only have $2,000 in savings. So a person with disability on SSI, on Medi-Cal, runs the risk of losing a lot if they actually don't have their money in an ABLE account or in a coffee can under their bed. So.
Wow. There's so much to say about all of these things. So I think I'm going to say that, and I know I monopolized the question and answer, but I would like people, if they have other comments or questions, to put them into the chat, and maybe they can be answered directly. By Michele and Jodi, because we do have one more youth poet. We have turns out that we put out the call for people, and people answered. So, and then we will be having our closing. So thank you so much, Jodi and Michele. I do want to, Madhur, are you still here?
Yes, hello.
Okay, thank you so much for sticking around. Madhur is the Vice Youth Poet Laureate of Santa Clara County, and she is the daughter of many people who have struggled and communicated through art. And she's the daughter of parents who protested dictatorship and carried their activist spirit into her. And so she's proud of her Black identity and her identity as an immigrant. And I'm just going to stop there and go to you.
Thank you. I think I'm gonna keep to just reading one poem today. I hope you enjoy. What will you say if you kill me? To those who hold the key to the cabinet with the silver spoons, yes, you, politician, my hopes and dreams. Torn at the seams, held up by fragile links, they chose guns over me. money over my right to breathe. I need someone fighting for me in June. I developed a fear of the outside. Locked behind window cells, left with nothing but heartache. It was undercover cop cars communing where our feet strolled, where our laughter echoed, marching feet brought beating hearts, beaten on, beaten tired, but not broken. Caged, we broke out with torches that they'll try to dim. We are watching false promises, honey sweet, sink to the bottom verti. Lukewarm with anticipation, heads spinning, waiting to stop at the finish line, streets sprayed with stop signs, and it's time to tear them down. What will you say if you kill me? There will be riots every week before you take my hopes and dreams. Tear them at the seams. I am someone fighting for me. Let's make it a we. Thank you for listening. It's been wonderful hearing everything. So yeah.
Thank you for staying around, and congratulations for both of you on your positions as Youth Poet Laureates. Janice Sapagao did give us some poems at one of our meetings once, and she said she couldn't do it this time, so she directed me to you folks. So thank you so much, and I'm sorry you had to wait until the end. Just that's what happened. So we are about to close. We have one announcement from Rosie, and then an announcement from Brenda. Yeah, so Rosie, can you give us your announcement, please?
Sure. So unfortunately, we experienced a death in our family on Sunday. If you heard of the accident of the driver who was plunged to his death 40 feet from the freeway on 280 by a BMW that was going too fast, that was the father of my cousin's ex-husband, who his birthday was the next day and turned 41. So his only son, my cousin's son, I put in the chat the GoFundMe that's taking place right now to cover the funeral expenses. They live in East San Jose. And unfortunately, my cousin's son, Robert, his father who died, his name was Robert, had just gotten a new job, and he was very excited. He didn't even come to the quinceañera because, you know, his mother wanted him to be right on target and, you know, not have to ask time off. And then this unfortunate thing happened. So if you can share it, anything helps, you know, $20, $10, whatever that is, you know, to cover the funeral expenses, that would be great and greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Rosie. It's important to understand that when crises happened in low-income communities, that there's not the cushion to absorb them. So anyway, right now, Brenda, would you like to speak about SBPA?
Hi everyone. Sorry, I don't have my camera on today. I've not been feeling well, so I'm just gonna speak. I just want to invite you guys to become members of the South Bay Progressive Alliance. You guys have seen the work. You guys see what we do, and we truly do fight for social justice. And we ensure that we have true representation by championing a lot of these issues that affect the most underrepresented in our communities. But we can't do this alone, and I want to invite you guys to join us and become a member. It's only $25. It's an annual fee of $25, and we do have waivers for students that cannot pay it. You can always speak to Peggy or anybody that's just having a hardship moment. We definitely want to keep you, and we definitely want you to become a member. Don't let money be an issue, and join us and fight all these injustices that we cannot do alone. And we together, we need to collectively grow, right? To be able to tackle all these issues, because there's so many injustices still that we are facing, and we are realizing more of them as this pandemic has hit our most underrepresented areas. So thank you guys for being here, and you guys have a good night.
Okay, thank you, everybody. And thank you for everybody for staying on. I think most people did. We had a lot to say. It took us a while to say it, but it was all good stuff. So this concludes our program. Nick, did you
Hold on. I want everybody to just give a shout out to Peggy for running the meeting. So if we can just give her a little reaction, little hearts, or put it in the chat. Thank you so much, Peggy. You always do an amazingly stellar job. So thank you again.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
Yeah, I second that for sure. Thank you, Rosie. And thank you, Peggy. You did an excellent job, and you always do so much for these amazing events. And thanks to all the speakers, moderators, poets. I always enjoy that beautiful poetry. And we will make this recording available. We'll send out the link so you all can share it out. And thanks again.
Thank you.